Judaism is the oldest monotheistic religion still in existence today. Its goal is to connect with your divine soul, or basically with God. Its guide is the Torah, which was received by Moses on Mount Sinai. Moses is the descendant of Abraham and the founder of the Kingdom of Israel. Some people might wonder, what am I talking about? Who are these people? Judaism and the relationship with God is a topic much too huge to cover in 5 minutes. However, I can tell about the legend behind the Torah, which is the first and central part of the Jewish Bible and its people. The Torah contains the 5 books of Moses: the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Most of the story takes place in the Genesis, including the story of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then there's the Exodus, which has the beginning of the story of Moses. There was a man born under the name of Abram in Babylonia. His father was an idol merchant, but Abram always questioned the pagan faith. He wanted to convince his father that worshiping the idols wasn't right. So when he was left alone to look after the store, he took a hammer and smashed every single one, except for the biggest. When his father returned, Abraham said, "Look! All the idols got into a fight and the big one smashed the little one." Terach replied, "Don't be ridiculous. These idols have no life or power. They can't do anything." After Terach said that, Abraham asked, "Then why do you worship them?" Over time, he came to realize that there's only one God. God soon made a deal with Abram. If he would leave his home and his family, he would make him into a great nation. The covenant was formed, and Abram left his home. Abram moved west to the city of Salem, or what is now Jerusalem. Here is a picture of modern Jerusalem. There, he was taught for years by Melchizedek, the priest of God Most High, who had sacred knowledge from the time of Adam, and according to some legends, was never born and never died. Time went by, and Abraham became concerned because he was growing old and had no children of his own. So his wife, Sarai, knowing she was too old to bear a child, gave Abraham her maidservant, Hagar. Hagar then gave birth to Ishmael, the father of the Arabs. But God renamed Abraham, and Sarah, Sarai, and then promised Abraham and Sarah a child. So when Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90, they had a child named Isaac. The name meant laughter, to express Abraham's joy of having a child at that old age. Isaac was the subject of a test Abraham was given. This also tested Isaac's faith, for he knew what was happening. Abraham had to sacrifice Isaac to God. However, in this region, child sacrifice was common. That is why what happened was unusual. God sent an angel to stop Abraham at the last moment. According to the Torah, Abraham did not want Isaac to marry a Canaanite woman, for they worship false idols. So he sent a servant to the city of Nahor. There he met Rebekah and took her to Isaac, who married her and loved her. Then she gave birth to twins, a hunter named Esau and a spiritually minded man named Jacob. The twins were at war from the moment they were born. Esau was Isaac's favorite, and Jacob was Rebekah's favorite. Esau had little regard for Abraham's spiritual heritage, so he sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew and married 2 Canaanite women. On top of that, Rebekah tricked Isaac into giving his blessing to Jacob rather than Esau. Esau was furious, so Jacob had to run away to his uncle's house, where he met Rachel. When he met Rachel, her father thought that she would do better marrying off him rather than an outsider. However, he said that he wouldn't give his daughter to Jacob in marriage for free just because they were related. So Jacob served Rachel's father for 7 years, and even then he got tricked and got Rachel's older sister, Leah, instead. He was furious, but still agreed with Leah and Rachel's father to work for another 7 years to marry Rachel. Between Leah's maidservant, and Rachel's maidservant, they had 12 sons and 1 daughter, who became the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob had a favorite among his sons, Joseph, which made his brothers jealous. To add to that, he had dreams of them bowing down to him, which caused his brothers to hate him. One day he went to his brothers, but they saw him from a distance and were plotting to kill him. One said not to, so they threw him down a hole. Some Ishmaelites then passed by, and they sold Joseph to them. In Egypt, he became a slave to the Pharaoh's steward. However, the steward's wife wanted Joseph, but he knew better and didn't betray his master. So she got him thrown into the Pharaoh's prison. There he met the cupbearer and the cook of the Pharaoh. They had dreams, but didn't know what they meant, so Joseph interpreted them. The cupbearer was to be released from prison, and the cook would be impaled, all in 3 days' time. Joseph then asked the cupbearer to tell the Pharaoh about him, but he completely forgot about Joseph. 2 years later, the Pharaoh had 2 dreams. He called all the wise men in the country to interpret that dream, but they couldn't. By then, however, the cupbearer had remembered about Joseph and told the Pharaoh about him. Joseph said that both dreams meant that there would be 7 years of prosperity and 7 years of famine. Then the Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of collecting the food. Jacob, who had thought that Joseph is dead for years now, heard that there is grain in Egypt. He sent all of his sons but Benjamin to Egypt to get the grain. Joseph, who was handing it out, recognized his brothers. He accused them of being spies and said Simon had to stay until they brought their youngest brother with them. So they did, and Benjamin had a silver cup, such as this one, put into his bag. Joseph then accused him of stealing it and said that he had to stay. The brothers begged him not to put Benjamin in prison, for their father would surely die from grief. At this point, Joseph told them that he was their brother and invited them to stay in Egypt. Years later, a new Pharaoh came to be who feared the Israelites and made them into slaves. The book of Exodus talks about an Egyptian princess finding Moses. However, it looks more like the Egyptian princess actually gave birth to him, with an Israelite as a father, probably a liaison officer between Egyptians and Jews. When Moses got older, he led the Israelites out of Egypt. And it is while leading them in the wilderness he received the scroll of Torah, which was carried by the Jews in a special ark. So God told Moses to go to Mount Sinai. Here's the view of a mountain. There, God made a covenant with him, including the stone tablets with the fingerprint of God, and gave him the knowledge of the commandments, including 10 commandments which would keep the covenant going. Hebrew, the language of the scroll, had no vowels, and on top of that, the original text didn't have any spaces either. Thus, the text could have multiple meanings. Then Moses stayed up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights with no food or water to receive the rest of the instructions on how to interpret the Torah, so-called the Oral Torah, or the Mishnah. The Torah talks about some mundane things and some miraculous things. It talks about some people trying to find God and about God trying to find man and guide him without taking any of the free will. It is not just a legend. It is a historical document that hasn't changed in 2,000 years. It talks about the importance of the relationship with God, which I think we should take very seriously.